South Africa has a crisis on its hands. 1 in 4 children are stunted and they won't reach their full potential. Now, stunting is a condition that arises from, among other things, prolonged undernutrition. It affects physical growth and brain development, but there's hope. The newly launched Grow Great campaign has a plan. Watch this.
The first 2 years of a child's life is an opportunity to lay down the foundation for their future academic success, health, and general well-being. It's an exciting time, but it's also a time of vulnerability to stunting.
Stunting ke bolwetse bo le re boama gore ngwana a godishwa botse ene bo moama mo tlhaloganyong le go goleng ga gage akere go se fepega botse ga ngwana akere
1 in 4 of South Africa's children are stunted, and this can unjustly rob them from becoming the best they can be. Stunted children on average perform worse at school than their non-stunted counterpart. They are at a higher risk of developing diseases like diabetes or hypertension, and they are vulnerable to being trapped in intergenerational cycles of poverty.
The Grow Great campaign is galvanizing South Africans towards a stunting-free future. Using data to mobilize policymakers, stories to inspire the public, mom and baby classes to support parents, and communities of practice to empower practitioners. Together, we can stop the silent epidemic and bring stunting down to 0.
Stunting is not good for the nation. The latest survey that we ran, that was run by Stunted SA, reflects the persistence of stunting in South Africa. It is a condition that is possible to defeat.
Most South Africans are not reaching their full potential. That is why it is important that we address the issue of nutrition to overcome stunting, especially in an environment where South Africa traditionally used to depend on unskilled labor. If we do not invest in nutrition to overcome stunting, we are really denying and therefore negating all our developmental work. Therefore, investing in a stunting-free South Africa should be everybody's business.
Encourage mothers to exclusively breastfeed for 6 months or for as long as they're able to. Also protect their rights to breastfeed in homes, communities, and the workplace.
Demand a safe environment with access to clean water and sanitation that enables us to raise healthy children.
We need to grow greatness. I am growing greatness.
I'm growing greatness.
I'm growing greatness.
I am growing greatness.
I'm growing greatness.
I am growing greatness. You are growing
I'm joined in studio by the Grow Great campaign executive director, Dr. Kapana Mabaso, mother of 3, Ayanda Boroto, and post-doctoral fellow, Dr. Rilat Saeed Mohammed. Thank you very much, all 3 of you, for coming in. Important topic. Well done.
Thank you.
You scripted that, was your idea. Tell us more about it. What made you feel that this is something that needs to be tackled now?
Yes, I mean, it's a collective effort. I think many South Africans, particularly the Statistician General and others, have been alerting us to the high prevalence of stunting. Some of the work that RELAT has done has also shown that we're really letting our smallest but important citizens down by not addressing the silent emergency. And so a group of funders came together and decided that they needed to commit to galvanizing South Africa towards a stunting-free future.
Why has it taken so long?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I suppose, South Africa, we have many challenges. I think we've rightly focused on some of the big ones, but we are moving into an era where it's not enough that children just survive. Certainly as an upper middle income country, we can do better, and we need to be investing more in children, not just surviving, but thriving. And really, stunting stands in the way of children thriving.
You were featured in the film. A lot of your research is on this. Tell us what you have found.
So it all started by doing this, what we call a systematic review. So we look at the scientific literature done in South Africa, and that where they counted how many children were basically stunted since 1970s up to 2013. And what we found is in the last 20 to 30 years, the prevalence of stunting stayed between 20 and 30%. So basically 1 in 3 children were stunted. And although the government has done this extensive nutrition program, stunting has stayed around these numbers. So it raised questions.
It's an unacceptable number, isn't it? I mean, that's so many of our children, a whole generation.
It is, and I think it's only fair to say that also before there were all other forms of undernutrition. So you remember the child that is very thin, and that was the priority back then. And as we are combating that, this stunting issue emerged in a way and became more visible, if you like.
I've been hearing about the 4 pillars that you advocate to get people to prevent this from happening. And I know breastfeeding is part of it. You are a firm believer in breastfeeding.
Yes, I am.
Tell us why.
Well, I'm a mom of 4. I breastfed my daughter, who's now 16, for 3 years. And I can basically count the number of times that she's fallen ill in the 16 years of her life. So I do think that breastfeeding is very important. But going back to stunting, if we're talking about undernourishment, a big part of combating that is then making it, conducive for women to be able to breastfeed freely as and when.
And that's not really happening?
No, not
Why?
really, especially in the private sector. So I'm born and bred in KZN, so I find that women in KZN, rural areas like Limpopo and in the townships are happy and free to breastfeed their children as and when they want. But I remember moving up to Johannesburg. I remember sitting with a group of males and females, and my then 2-year-old, 16-year-old now wanted to feed, and I just yanked out my boob and I breastfed because I come from an environment where women can breastfeed freely. And I just remember how uncomfortable people were that I was breastfeeding in front of them. But I didn't understand up until I left that meeting and somebody came to me and said, "Oh, wow, that was very brave of you." And I thought, brave? Why is that brave? It's like, oh, you just breastfed in front of everybody in that manner. So I realized that perhaps in areas that are more commercialized, like urban areas like your Joburgs, which are the hubs of the economy, the socialization around breastfeeding is a little bit different, and that becomes a problem. So you find that in places like corporate, you walk into big offices that have designated areas for smoking and other things, but no designated areas for women to either pump or breastfeed their kids. And I found myself in that situation when I was still in corporate, where it was difficult to just pump. I would be pumping in my office, or I'd be pumping in the bathroom.
Or something.
Yeah.
But isn't there a stigma as well attached to breastfeeding because of AIDS in the past where you were encouraged to breastfeed? It's also a sign of wealth, isn't it? Not to breastfeed, rather buy milk.
Yeah, I mean, I think the policies in South Africa changed as the science changed, which is good. But obviously what changes at policy level doesn't always make it into communities. And I think, as Ayanda says, we don't necessarily create enabling environments for moms to breastfeed for as long as they'd like to. So we have a law in place that allows women to take 2 30-minute breaks until the child is 6 months of age for breastfeeding or expressing in the workplace. But few workplaces implement it, few women are aware of it. So these are some of the, I mean, we've always focused on telling the mom to breastfeed, but actually moms will successfully breastfeed if we create enabling environments, if we are supportive, if we make it safe and pleasant for women to breastfeed. And that's what our campaign is trying to challenge all of South Africa, that breastfeeding is not just the mom's responsibility. Us as communities need to make it conducive.
How important is it from a nutritional point of view?
To breastfeed. So it has two advantages, I want to say, in terms of breastfeeding. First of all, it's bring all the nutrients that the babies need. So we have to understand that also the breast milk, as the baby grow, it also change in nutritional content. The other thing is studies have also shown that they also contain all the antibodies to fight the disease that the babies may encounter. So it kind of protects also the baby against infectious disease and other things that the baby can encounter in the environment. So studies have actually showed that as the baby gets sick as well, the mother starts actually providing that antibodies through her breast milk. So it's quite important.
And I was interested to hear that it's not only nutrition, but it's also love. And caring for your child. And is that difficult when you've got parents who work, or one of the parents is not there, or, you know, so many of our sort of migrant workforce?
Yeah, so that's another element of the conversation around, if we're talking about making it conducive or enabling for working moms to breastfeed. Usually what I find is that we focus more on the private sector that is a higher LSM. But when you're looking at women who are involved in informal work, for instance, so what do we do for women who are cleaning and sweeping Sandton streets or malls? What are we doing for women who are going and selling sweets on the side of the street and they can't take their babies? And that's a broader conversation to have. You know, and I was thinking the other day that actually, when women leave hospitals, they usually leave with a goodie bag. I think it should be absolutely a must that when women leave hospitals, they must leave with a breast pump. You know, and that's another challenge because these breast pumps are really expensive. Not every average South African can afford one.
And I believe it's intergenerational as well.
Yes, I mean, stunting, you know, has entered, you know, a mom who is stunted herself is at a higher risk of having a stunted child, and the long-term effects on, you know, school performance, on economic opportunities. I mean, there's a whole host of literature that attests to the fact that stunting really does rob children of reaching their full potential.
Tell us a little bit more about the, excuse me, the impact and what a child would go through.
Yeah, I mean, so particularly in that first 1,000 days, so from falling pregnant, conception to a child's second birthday, about 80% of brain mass is developed. And that's when children are most vulnerable. They're not in any facility, they're not in creches, they're not in schools. They go to the clinic maybe 20 of those first 1,000 days. And that's when mums and families need the most support. And if children are robbed of that, they're at risk of dropping out sooner, they're at risk of diseases like diabetes and hypertension, they're at risk of being unemployed as adults. So it's both a social injustice that a child, even before they really get started at life, is already on a back foot, but also economically. We're robbing ourselves as a nation of prosperity. You know, all our interventions happen in basic education, in higher education, but really this critical window is a missed opportunity. And so our campaign doesn't assume that us as a small group will solve stunting, but really we want to inspire South Africans to get behind the silent emergency that's robbing all of us of the future we want for South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, how do you change that if you've got that sort of challenge fatigue, possibly in South Africa, that's got so many issues? I mean, what should you, in your research, be pushing for so that it feels that it's something that's easily tackled?
I think that now that we've shown that it's a reality in South Africa, our work now consists in finding the right intervention program that may work and that we can scale up at a national level. The kind of work that Kopano and the group involved in the Grow Great campaign are doing is that kind of work where they implement intervention in small scales and they look at whether or not they're managing to increase the breastfeeding, adherence to immunization, and all the different parts that may help the child to grow better. So on our side, it's providing the evidence, really, the scientific evidence to say if we implement this and this and this practices into the first 1,000 days, we actually increase the height of the child, but not only that, the cognitive development and less morbidity in terms of diseases that child will have during that period.
And I like the way you work, that you go in from ground level rather than just, you know, banging on the door of the, you know, whatever ministry is involved in this sort of thing. Does that get a lot of traction? Is there enthusiasm there amongst the community?
Yeah, I mean, we're running mom and baby classes. We've got about just over 60 women in communities in Gauteng and other parts of the country running support groups. So it's not just about food. It's about women being supported through pregnancy and in those first period after birth. You know, we've got quite high levels of maternal depression in South Africa that goes largely unnoticed. And moms need to first take care of themselves before they can take care of. Bless you.
Thank you for saying it before I sneeze. Carry on.
Before they have to take, I mean, often we focus on the baby and the mom is just a means to an end. But we know that a happy mom who's healthy also has, you know, the capacity to take care of children. And so we're doing that. Also working with community healthcare workers. They are the workforce that enter homes, but often they're on the margins of the health system. They're a forgotten group. So we're supporting them, celebrating them, because they are in homes, supporting moms and children. We're also doing mass media campaigns. We've got billboards that are coming up. We've got radio PSAs, trying to, one, make South Africans aware, but also to see this as an opportunity for greatness rather than another problem, that this is solvable. Countries with smaller economies have reduced stunting. Peru, Brazil, you know, Maharashtra and India, countries have come close to beating stunting, and South Africa can't say we can't do it.
Well, let's try and do it and have a success story. Thank you, all three of you, for talking to us. It was Great Campaign Executive Director, Dr. Kopane Mabaso, mother of 4, Ayanda Barotho, and postdoctoral fellow, Dr. Rilat Syed Mohammed. Thank you. That's our show for tonight. News is next.